One of the world's most mysterious, unsolved natural phenomenon. Or is it even real?
Sightings abounded in the 18th and 19th centuries, but now most people have never even heard the name Will o' the Wisp.
Bones, have you ever seen rogue lights or flames in a swamp before?
I never have, but I tell you what, if I did, I think I'd remember it.
Exactly. If this really is a natural, spontaneous combustion of swamp gas, I'd have to believe they're responsible for many an outdoor of ghost sighting.
You know, why have sightings almost vanished? Issac Newton spoke of it like it was plain as day fact. Bram Stoker and J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it into their iconic fiction, and today scientists think they may have cracked the code and solved the 700-year-old mystery.
On Bart Bones Tonight, it's swamp lights, blue flames, the folklore, and the fact behind Will o' the Wisp. Bart and Bones geek out on classic horror. Every night they haunt the movie screen. It's plots, it's themes, it's scary memes, it's comedy twisted through your dreams. Bart and Bones take you behind the screen. From the basement halls of the Haunted Mansion, it's Bart and Bones Tonight. So Bones, what is a wisp? Is it a light? Is it a flame? As the folklore says, a man carrying a lantern leading you astray in a swamp? A corpse candle. Is it legend? Is it folklore? Is it real? Is it fact? My first question is simply, have you ever heard of this before?
You know, I never have until I started doing this research of this recently.
And I remember hearing the name as a kid. And I remember this idea of it being some type of apparition in the swamp. To me, it struck the connotation of a ghost. Let's read sections of a poem by George Meredith and try and discover some of the early folklore behind this blue flames, blue lights in the swamp mystery. George Meredith, who lived in England, 1828 to 1909, that is the heyday and the prime location for Will o' the Wisp. Bones, take it away.
Follow me, over brake and under tree, through the bosky, tanglery, brushwood and bramble. Follow me.
Right away, we kind of see this common theme in the folklore behind Will o' the Wisp, leading astray. So are these things supposed to be evil swamp spirits? Evil spirits? Or is it just simply a fact that, hey, swamps are treacherous places? And seeing a natural phenomenon in the swamp, going after it, you're going to be led into a treacherous natural terrain.
Indeed.
Continue further for us.
Down into the bulrush beds, mist the reeds and osier heads, in the rushy soaking damps where the vapors pitch their camps. Follow me for a midnight ramble.
And now we have vapors. So to some people, the wisps are lights, right? Even fairies in folklore. To others, it's described as flames. And maybe that's interchangeable. As we go on, a lot of these names kind of refer to this idea of a lantern. This phenomenon supposedly looks like a lantern light, which is both light and flame. And again, in the poem, we have midnight ramble, always at night. Is it spooky? Is it evil? The dark of midnight? Or is it simply that these flames or this light, this phenomenon, is just too pale. And to be able to see it contrast, you need darkness around it. It's simply not going to overpower sunlight, therefore people aren't seeing it in the day. Let's continue onward, Bones. Let's continue our lyrical journey.
Down into the croaking ditches, rotten log, spotted frog, beetle bright with crawling light. Oh, what a joy, oh ho.
Beetle bright is interesting here because some folks conjectured that these were bioluminescent insects. Okay, we all know about lightning bugs, right? Think of a pocket of them, a swarm, a school, something of that nature. And then we've got describing in this poem deep into the purple bog, purple. There's different reports on the light, the color of the light. A lot of them are blue, but of course, purple's real close on that spectrum. Let's see what else we got, Bones.
Where like host of puckered witches, all the shivering argues sit, warming hands and chafing feet by the blue marsh hovering oils. Oh, the fools for all their moans, not a forest mad with fire could still their teeth or warm their bones, or loose them from their chilly coils.
And now we're getting witches involved. Yeah. Scary stuff. Blue marsh? Now we're mentioning the blue marsh hovering oils. Fools. Ignis Fatuus is a name that we'll bring up later that means foolish fire. And it goes along with this idea of leading the foolish people follow it because it leads them astray. Bones and chilly coils. Is this a reference to the corpse candle? The idea of people report these in churchyards, which is where graveyards were historically, as well as the swamp.
You're right.
And there's people that speculate to say, is methane the fuel for this flame, for this light? Is this decomposing material, and therefore they're seeing these lights over graveyards? Is that what's being represented in this poem here? It's definitely part of the history.
Hither, thither, to and fro, breathing mist and whisking lamps, plashing in the shiny swamps, while my cousin Lantern Jack, with cook ears and cunning eyes, turns him round upon his back.
All right, now we've got it sealed here. So to and fro, the lantern. Is this the motion? A lot of people, when they report seeing this, and this is where it gets the name, Willow, being Will, a guy who's like a wisp. Jacko, lantern. Yeah, that's actually the origin of this name. This blue flames phenomenon is so pervasive that that's where the name comes from. Jack-o'-lantern is Jacko, this guy that's ready to lead you astray, this evil spirit, with his lantern. And that's the whisking lamp moving to and fro. So that's the folklore side. Is there a science side to it? Let's look at around the same time, contemporary 19th century, even back to the 18th century. Issac Newton, who we don't have to introduce, mentions this in 1704 in his paper Optics. Is plain as day fact. Alessandro Volta, who invented the electric battery and discovered methane, is tightly associated with this idea because there's your fuel, there's your combustibility. Proposing this idea of, oh, here's the answer to the Will o' the Wisp. There is this natural, airborne, flammable material, methane, present in swamps. And there are some people back from this time that really pursued it as a scientific phenomenon, which is awesome to me. To go on an expedition to find one of these things and discover the answer, that's awesome.
That would be a dream.
Let's go back to
true.
1862. This is Thomas Lamb Phipson writing to the editor of the Times in the Times newspaper, November the 4th, 1862. He mentions his own book, which was published by London L. Reeve and Company, 1862. Bones, kick it off.
To the editor of the Times. Sir, I read in your paper of November 1st a conspicuous letter upon the natural phenomenon known as Will o' the Wisp, Ignis Fatuus, in which the writer boldly denounces this vagabond as a rank impostor and challenges the production of evidence in proof of his existence. I beg to accept this challenge, and the more readily as I have quite as much right as your talented correspondent to dent the existence of this meteor. But before writing the 8 or 10 pages relating to the Ignis Fatuus in my work, Phosphorescence, or the emission of light by minerals, plants, and animals, I made careful inquiries about it from persons in every respect worthy of confidence and who had witnessed it many times. I found that it is very frequently to be seen. For instance, in the peat districts around Carlisle about this season. Several of my friends have witnessed it, and one intelligent lady, when she heard that I, like many others, had never had the good fortune to see this mysterious light, exclaimed, "How sorry I am that you cannot send you a Will o' the Wisp up to London, for they are common enough here about November."
That's awesome.
Now, as to the cause of this vagabond, from all the evidence I've been able to collect, I am inclined to believe that more than one natural phenomenon has been included under the names of Will o' the Wisp, jack-o'-lantern, elf candles, Ignis Fatuus. But as regards our English Will of the Wisp, which flickers over boggy land, it is evidently nothing more than ignited marsh gas, carburetted hydrogen, the same gas which spontaneously inflames in coal mines, the specific gravity of which is about 1/2 that of air. Its faint flame is almost invisible in the daytime, but becomes gradually visible as night approaches. On account of its lightness, this gas burns with a very wild flame. I quote the following short paragraph from page 66 of my Phosphorescence. In the valley of Gorbitz, Mr. Blesson discovered a light emanating from marshy ground. Remaining for some days near this place, in order to study the phenomenon as closely as possible, he found it was owing to an ignited gas, the faint flame of which was invisible during the day, but became gradually visible in the evening. The gas appears to have been carbureted hydrogen or marsh gas. As he approached it, the flame receded, but he eventually succeeded in lighting a piece of paper by it. There are many other cases of spontaneous emission of light, quite as wonderful as the Will of the Wisp, which frequently escape the observation of those who do not look with their brains. And I am quite at a loss to imagine why your worthy correspondent should have fixed upon the jack-o'-lantern as a vagabond and impostor rather on those mysterious lights observed by General Sabine, Beccaria, Rosier, Maffei, Dr. Kane, etc. to which I have lately called attention. Those who look into natural phenomenon are often reminded of Humboldt's explanation. So varied are the sources of terrestrial light.
What an awesome spirit of scientific adventure, love of mystery. That is really cool. Before we get into the modern day science of this, let's discover what keeps this in modern day folklore. And I kind of argue it's hanging by a thread. Let's start a little earlier on, mid-19th century, Hughes the Werewolf by Sutherland Menzies, 1838. There's a real interesting passage here. For folks that have read Dracula, this is going to ring familiar.
So soon as the vapors of the marsh were seen to blend their ghastly wreath with the twilight, and as that darkling time drew on which explains the diabolical sense of the old saying, "'tween dog and wolf, 'twixt hawk and buzzard," at that hour the will o' the wisp began to glimmer around.
Fun. And that's the cultural side of this. Maybe there is, and that's cool if there is a natural explanation to this. It's a rare phenomenon. Even if that's true, this is obviously a very rare phenomenon. And if you saw something like this, you're going to think it's a ghost. And so it becomes synonymous with horror literature. Here we have the hour when the will-o'-the-wisp begin to glimmer around. And that's the turning point between dog and wolf, right? Mm-hmm. It's werewolf time. It's scary time. It's witches. It's all that stuff.
It is.
That's the popular pop culture sensation around it. And here we have famous horror novel Dracula, Bram Stoker, 1897. Remember, he introduces his title character, the franchise antagonist, with what? The scene involving the blue flames. If you remember, Harker meets the driver, who later the driver is Dracula. And he takes him on that final leg of the journey up to the castle. And it's a nightmare of the wolf packs chasing them. And this bizarre sequence of the driver getting out and going to these blue flames. And it's the first moment where you get introduced to the supernatural character of the entire book. It is the threshold crossing moment. Everything up to this point is normal. Then Harker sees the blue flames through the driver. Impossibly through the driver. He's looking, and Dracula should be blocking his path, and he sees this blue flame right through him. You're going to be careful about how you introduce the supernatural character of your long novel in chapter 1. Stoker chose this will-o'-the-wisp legend, this concept, to introduce it. It was based on research done by Emily Gerard for a work titled Transylvania Superstitions in 1885. And that's where you can find the specific Romanian version that she documented of this legend. So a lot of these European cultures have variations of it. With the Romanian thing, it was marking treasure, but it still had that hallmark of it's leading people astray. Because remember, if it was only on certain days and certain times that you were going to get the treasure. Otherwise, this was deadly business.
It's like, do not seek the treasure during these times of the year.
Later on, J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. The movies became so popular, people should remember the scene in the Dead Marshes with the blue lights. Don't follow the lights. Does that sound familiar to the poems and the folklore we've just talked about?
It sure does.
Blue lights in the swamps, don't follow them, they're going to lead you astray. It's the same thing. Here's the Will o' the Wisp legend. Here's Tolkien, a British author.
Backing it up.
The British Isles are this hotbed of the Will o' the Wisp sightings, especially the 19th century, probably early into the 20th century. And now it's kind of dissipating. If this was a real thing, if this is a real thing, as we mentioned earlier, it's got to be responsible for how many ghost sightings. I mean, this looks like a ghost that supposedly dances and floats across the bog. Just think of how weird that would be to see something like that. And that's why it's such a cool mystery. And like, it almost boggles my mind that there isn't people applying some science and exploring and trying to find one of these things and document them. We're going to talk about that a little more later as we get into some of the revelations that have come about. But that's the big question. We have like 0 modern day sightings of this thing. Everybody's got a cell phone now that can take pictures, video, whatever. Granted, maybe these happen soon enough. Now, in this account that we read, the guy was able to approach it and light a piece of paper by it.
That's pretty close.
That's very close, and obviously he had some amount of time to observe it. So it should be ample enough time to get your phone out and get a recording of it.
Indeed.
I'm not aware of any picture of this today.
You know, I'm not either.
So if it was real, has something changed? Is this industrialization? Have we lost some particular recipe in marshlands that created the environment to produce these naturally combusting flames?
Like, did we stop burying our dead in the marshes?
In the marshes. Or is this not a real thing? Is this a situation of myth taking hold? This horror iconography overriding the scientific side of it. People wanting to see it. People wanting an image of don't go out into a swamp at night. And we've manifested this. Well, people are pursuing this. There was a 2014 paper, Will o' the Wisp, an ancient mystery with extremophile origins, by Howell G.M. Edwards. And he basically poses this question that why is there no modern sightings? And he's listing a few rarely cited phenomenon that are similar to this Will o' the Wisp idea. St. Elmo's fire being one of them, if folks have heard of that, which is an electrical discharge in strong electrostatic fields in the vicinity of a thunderstorm. Supposedly this happens with ships at sea. Famously, the people that have read Melville's Ahab, Moby Dick, you remember the scene where Ahab commands the storm and he captures the St. Elmo's fire. Ball lightning is another one. It's this luminous globular lightning generated by fork lightning striking near the ground. Super rare, but it's supposedly super real. Something that has been observed, cataloged, specified. It happens. It's crazy rare. It would be crazy to see. But ball lightning's a thing.
Oh, it is. I've talked to some people who've seen that personally.
Yeah, and with the airlines, which is a unique situation. You being with the airlines, to be able to see something like that or hear the stories.
Yep. I guess they got hit by lightning and a ball of lightning shot up the aisle and exited out at the tip of the plane. It was crazy.
Which is wild. I mean, when you're there in the moment, you got to be thinking there's no way this just happened. You are totally freaked out. Because there is no like natural explanation of like, oh yeah, I was just walking around yesterday and a ball of lightning went down the road.
Just came right on by.
Ditto with lights in a swamp. People are going to think you're nuts because this is not a common happening.
Indeed, I probably wouldn't even bring it up, might just live with it.
Now, places of natural gas, is this like an evolution of fire damp or methane in the vicinity of geological faults?
That's a good possibility. I've heard about
that's
things
a similar
like that.
phenomenon. That's a verified phenomenon. Does it apply to the Will o' the Wisp? Well, not really, but it's a similar phenomenon. Is it that? Is Will o' the Wisp something else? So these are all kind of parallels that this 2014 paper is mentioning, that here are some existing known documented phenomenon, and it's not outside the bounds of craziness to suggest that this luminous swamp gas exists. Luminous owls, I had not heard of this. Some people think it's called by what's known as foxfire, which is basically fungal material which glows in the dark.
Interesting.
So it's not a heat source or anything, it's like a bioluminescence. Think deep sea creatures. Like when you see the diving machines go down and you see all these little tiny jellyfish looking things that light up and communicate by bioluminescence.
I've heard about that in a bay down in Puerto Rico that glows blue like that at night because of the creatures.
And so that's out there. And evidently, whether it's owls being luminous themselves, I don't know if there's a study or they know for certain what's going on, but either they're getting this fungal onto their feathers, but people report seeing luminous owls as being rare, but something that happens. And wouldn't that be crazy? Wouldn't that be shocking? Like absolutely shocking. Number one, like it's pretty neat to see an owl. But number two, you see a glow in the dark.
A glowing owl
shooting out of the trees.
Not a glowing owl.
It's crazy. And here's these things that are real, yet they're different than the wisp. Is the wisp in this category? Real but rare? Uncatalogued? That's so great. Now here's what the paper suggests that's really interesting to me. An idea of employing new tech to discover Will o' the Wisp. It seems to me like the author's really imploring them to say, somebody should go out there and study this. And his argument is using some of the technology that has been done to discover like the life forms around hydrothermal vents in the deep sea. Like there's different means of discovering, is this some biological luminescent phenomenon? Is this some ignition and combustible gas phenomenon? Therefore, what is that? And use some of this technology, stage it out in swamps where sightings have been reported or the conditions seem to be right so much as we know, and really do an expedition and study and try to catalog this.
I'll volunteer.
I volunteer as well. That would be awesome.
I want to go.
What's more fun than mystery like that? To me, the Will o' the Wisp has got to be like one of the coolest unsolved mysteries. What's more fun? Like that's the whole thing of horror. That's the whole point right there. That's exciting. That's cool. And like I say, it shocks me that like nobody cares about this. And maybe it's because nobody's seen it. Maybe this is extinct. Maybe it never existed. I don't know. Final thoughts on Will o' the Wisp after a moment, but first, Bones, what are you watching tonight?
Rise from the shadows, ready for fright.
Hey, what you watching?
Classic horror tonight. Woo! In 1966, beloved comedian and actor Don Knotts starred in a film that tickled a funny bone and spooked the nation. Shot on the Universal backlot, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken follows a timid typesetter named Luther Heggs, who spends one night in the haunted Simmons Mansion, a creaky old house filled with secrets, organ music, and ghostly whispers. Once the movie hit theaters, audiences went wild for Knotts' nervous charm and wide-eyed terror, turning the film into a surprise box office hit. It sparked a wave of comedy-horror hybrids and cemented Knotts as the king of the scaredy cat genre. What did Don Knotts really uncover in that haunted mansion? And what's the legacy of the film that made fear funny?
It did. It's cool. You're going to have fun rewatching that movie because it's got to be one of the best horror comedies ever. I would definitely put it in that conversation.
Indeed.
In terms of a haunted house movie, it's not bad. I mean, obviously it's fun, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's comedy, but the scenes, especially when he first goes to the haunted house and stays overnight, that's pretty cool stuff. And it's just all the classic horror tropes, but tropes are there because they're awesome. Like, that's the staying power of it. Give me a classic haunted house movie. Yeah, I'm going to eat that up all the time. And this just hits it right on the nose.
And you have Don Knotts getting scared out of his wits and passing out. That's a winner every time in my book.
Oh, great comedic actor. Absolutely. And a cast that he's real familiar with. If you watch this, you're going to see a lot of known commodities from the Andy Griffith Show and things like that nature. But it feels like Young Frankenstein, it feels like one of those things where the people making this film had some respect and some love for horror movies, for classic horror. They wanted to do a haunted house movie right. They wanted to give you that snippet of, here's a real haunted house movie.
And they did.
Yeah, this is going to be a comedy, but we're going to pay homage and we're going to make sure we get this part right.
And
it works.
Did.
I like
great.
it. You're going to like it. If you all out there haven't seen it, you got to watch it.
Go check it out.
Classic horror. Final thoughts on Will o' the Wisp. So it's interesting, just recently, within the last month or so, there's been many outlets reporting a breakthrough by chemist Richard Zare. And his breakthrough is micro-lightning. Chemical and Engineering News was one of the outlets reporting. Bones, give us a little snippet of what's said here.
Solving the mystery of the Will o' the Wisps was not something study leader Richard Zare, a chemist and professor of natural science at Stanford University, set out to do. Several years ago, Zare wanted to know why tiny water droplets were so different from bulk water and when it came to chemical reactivity. He'd noticed that when water breaks into micro droplets, a portion of its H2O molecules undergo a Jekyll and Hyde transformation into hydrogen peroxide. In his quest to determine why, Zare discovered that a strong electric field generated at the interface of water and air drove this transformation.
So there's the intersection of journalism and entertainment. We have to mention Jekyll and Hyde and horror stuff because this is Will o' the Wisp, you know. Let's make this otherwise mundane to a lot of people, sadly, discovery of microlighting. We've got to make it interesting. It's got to be Frankenstein's lab, you know. So anyhow, they kind of accomplished here. Richard Zare seems to have accomplished what Edwards was proposing in the 2014 paper this idea of use some of this new tech to study, and that's what he did. They recreated in a lab swamp-like natural conditions and performed this observation using this new tech. And voila, here we discover there's little sparks inside these bubbles of lightning. What does that mean? There's your ignition for the spontaneous combustion. If, like Alessandro Volta way back said, hey, here's this airborne gas called methane, and you can find it around in wetlands. Famously, it was around a lake. You can find this in swamps and stuff. Well, then the argument is, okay, sure, but what ignites it? Maybe it's this micro lightning. Now, I guess the hard part about this is people report the will o' the wisp quite often as above the water, right? So how does lightning inside bubbles translate to airborne methane? I'm not entirely certain. That might be a hole in the philosophy of this. But it does answer this basic question of, hey, there's your spark. It doesn't have to come from a thunderstorm. It doesn't have to come from, this doesn't have to be explained by people carrying kerosene lanterns. And that's why we only saw it in the 19th century. And people were just confused. It wasn't will o' the wisp. It was just you were seeing your neighbor out there with a kerosene lantern. I mean, that's a pretty lowbrow explanation. I mean, we're open to anything at this point. But this idea of this micro lightning, hey, this is a real thing. This small pieces of electricity that definitely could ignite something do exist in swamp-like conditions. Read us a little bit more on this, Bones.
Using spectroscopy, thermal probes, and mass spectrometry, the researchers determined that as the methane microbubbles moved, coalesced, and split on their way to the surface, some underwent charge separation. When some of the bubbles with opposite charges came together, they produced a micro lightning discharge. What's more, these flashes of micro lightning also initiated non-thermal oxidation of the methane, producing the same cool blue flame seen in Will o' the Wisps.
Hello. So the cool thing is the mystery persists. Maybe we're getting closer to an answer. Bones, let's put you on the spot right now. St. George's Day 2026. How about an expedition to find the blue flames of Dracula? Discover Will o' the Wisp.
Oh my goodness, are we going to get to go visit some swampy areas?
The swampiest of the swamps.
Oh my goodness, is it going to be dark?
Let's get that scary stuff. Let's get the witches going. Let's get the Jekyll and Hydes.
I'm in, man. I'm all in.
That's the cool thing about this. The mystery persists. Would it be great to find this and discover it? Of course. It's more fun. Like, the chase is more fun. If you discovered it, like, it'd be great, but it'd be a downer in the same sense. It's so awesome that today we still have, that author mentioned terrestrial lights, different sources of terrestrial lights. We still have unexplained terrestrial lights. We think about, we know everything on planet Earth, right? Like, maybe there's some stuff in the deep ocean we don't know. There's stuff in outer space we don't know. Here's Will o' the Wisp. On Earth, on ground,
right
on
in
foot.
front of us.
We can't explain it. We don't know what it's about. That is an awesome gift. The gift of mystery. It's what Stoker was giddy about with both science and mystery. Tolkien loved lore. What is better than this mythology and lore? That's the essence of it.
Indeed.
And I can't say enough about the fun of using that science as Van Helsing did in Dracula, to explore the real mystery like Dracula was existing in our modern world. Bones, what do we got on tap for next time?
In 1951, famed explorer and mountaineer Eric Shipton captured a photo that captured the imagination of the Western world. Taken on that year's Everest expedition, the photo compares an ice axe with a large impression in the snow representing a long line of footprints. Once the picture made it back home, the media frenzy ran wild of the abominable snowman, spurring expeditions and inspiring lifelong researchers to search for wild bipeds in all corners of the earth, home and abroad. What did Shipton really capture on that camera that day, and what's the impact of the photo that sparked Yeti fever? You're tuned in to Bart and Bones. For more of this and other classic horror content, visit infeedvideo.com. And don't forget to subscribe on Patreon to support the show, where it's plots, its themes, its scary memes. Bart and Bones take you behind the screams.